What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Terp Trends, where we connect with innovators and trailblazers shaping the future of cannabis. Today, we've got a true pioneer and OG joining the show, Eric Steenstra, co-founder and COO of Skyworld, a New York-based brand rooted in Indigenous tradition and inspired by the Skyworld itself, a place of origin and unity. Eric's been pushing this movement forward for decades. He has co-founded Ecolution, one of the first hemp lifestyle brands, and led Vote Hemp, helping pass the 2014 and 2018 farm bills that brought legal hemp cultivation back to the U.S. He's also guided tribal hemp programs, led the Hemp Industries Association, and helped countless communities build sustainable, ethical cannabis businesses. Eric's a visionary, a leader, and a living piece of hemp history. And today, we're talking Skyworld, legacy, and the deeper purpose driving this new chapter of cannabis culture. This is Terp Trends. Let's dive in. And learning more about you, man, especially you're dabbling into the cannabis realm, but did it seem like it started with hemp? Is that true?
So, honestly, it started out for me. I was in the music industry, and
Sweet.
I was in the music industry in the DC area, and somebody from Normal approached me
Okay.
around 1989, and I'd always been into cannabis, from high school days and all that. And but somebody approached me, and they were looking to do an event at the Sylvan Theater, which is right at the base of the Washington Monument. They were going to do a rally or whatever, and they wanted some music. Said I was working. I was like, okay, I can get you some bands. So I, of course, went down to go make sure everything went smoothly. And then I met, Alan St. Pierre, and I met Steve D'Angelo, and I met, John Getman, a number
Wow.
of other early people in the industry, and
What a
connected there.
lineup.
Yeah, it was great, man. And Steve and I became friends, and I think he's pretty open about his history. He was popular in DC, and I
Yep.
started buying from him, and it wasn't anything huge, but had a, really just enjoyed connecting with him. And he turned me on to Jack Harris' book. He knew Jack,
That's
and
awesome.
had been doing some of the hemp tour stuff. And I read the book, and we started talking. It was like, man, we should start a business, and that's how it led into hemp, and ended up starting a company called Ecolution around
Yeah.
1983. And
Okay.
we went to Eastern Europe, and we were found companies to help us manufacture a clothing line with jeans and shirts. And I'm a big fan of hemp clothing all the way. I'm
Yeah.
wearing hemp 100 all today, so I
That's
wear it
awesome.
almost every day, man. So I'm a real believer in the in all aspects of the plant.
Wow. That is that's a really cool beginning story, Eric.
It was pretty fortunate, man. It was a big sort of leap for me because I was, I'd been in music for quite a while. I loved what loved that, but I saw this opportunity, and I was excited about it, and just felt like we were kind of, at the early phases there. It was kind of an interesting time in the '90s. Hemp jewelry was really popular. Everybody was making stuff with hemp twine, and then a lot of people were opening so-called hemp stores, and that was really, ultimately it was a sort of failed concept. It wasn't enough. Just hemp wasn't enough in and of itself to sustain an entire store. But a lot of people did open stores back then. Some of them succeeded, and we grew the business through that, and eventually started selling into other more mainstream outlets. We worked with Adidas. We helped them develop some hemp sneakers. We sold like
Oh,
30,000 pairs of those, and it was a cool time, man. It was a very different time though from a cannabis standpoint, right? This is when it was a little bit dangerous to stick your head up and be involved in cannabis.
yeah, yeah, and I'm sure that was because even like the hemp stores that so now in modern day, when we think about hemp stores, we think of more of like the CBD, the
Yeah.
THCA flower that they're pushing like that. So let's take people back to understand like these hemp stores in that day, was it more oriented towards like clothing, goods, things like that, rather than being able to promote maybe flower that we are in the modern day?
Yeah, the that whole movement, with CBD, and then ultimately into like the cannabinoid space, was something we really never envisioned. Most of the hemp we were working with,
It's like industrial hemp.
it had a little more CBD in it, but it was super low in cannabinoids generally,
Yeah.
and so it. we were all focused on the fiber. So,
Yep.
hemp's this incredible plant with a long stalk. When you grow it the right way, it produces this really great bast fiber. Inside of the stalk, it's got the hurd. The hurd's incredible. Now they're finding for construction materials and
Yeah.
sort of all sorts
Yeah.
of different applications. And then in addition to that, back then there was a lot of body care products. There still are, but that was the industry was basically clothing, body care, and then foods. Discovered that the seed was super nutritious, and then people were utilizing that, and a lot of companies sprung up out of that, and created a small industry. It was a cool time, and I remember in 1994, some people we knew out in Arizona contacted us and said, "Hey, we want to kind of pull everybody together." We had a meeting in Scottsdale, and we formed this organization called the Hemp Industries Association, and there was maybe, I don't know, 100 entrepreneurs at this thing. It was really, the early phases of the industry, and yeah, a lot of cool people that I still, many who I still know to this day. But yeah, it was, but it was definitely completely different. There was no CBD. Nobody was talking about. Nobody really knew about that CBD had all this. All the additional aspects of what it could do for people.
Yeah, because back then there was such a strong textile, right? And then they used it for so many things. And we won't get into the political side on why we stopped using all that. But it's so interesting on how like popular and mainstream it was, but it was on the industrial side of hemp. And then we morphed into this more medical oil side. But you being more concentrated on the industrial side, what was that like? Because were you able to have industrial farms in the States, or was that all in Europe or other places as well?
No, everything had to be imported, right? Because cannabis was, I mean, marijuana,
Yeah,
which is scheduled under federal law, right? Was basically, if you look at the definition of marijuana in federal law, it says marijuana is all parts of the plant, and then it has this exclusion clause, and it says except for the fiber from the stalks and the seed that's incapable of
got it.
germination. And so we were using that exclusion that said these parts of the plant could be brought in. And so we would go to, I mean, some people went to China, some people
Yeah,
went to different places, but we ended up going to the Eastern Europe.
nice.
Tiananmen Square just happened a few years before that. We weren't feeling great about like doing business in China, and so we went to Hungary first,
Okay, yeah,
and we found that there
beautiful.
was there was an incredible industry that had been there, and they were just coming into democracy,
Yeah,
93, 94, and they were already making twine, and they were making canvas and heavier textiles. And then we discovered that in Romania, just the next, which is really, the two
yep,
countries are pretty intertwined there because of the way the borders have changed over the years and whatnot. But in any case, Romania had taken a different approach, and they had come up with a finer fiber that then they were blending it with other fibers and making textiles. And so we were like, hey, this is exciting. We could make a clothing line here.
yeah.
And I mean, it was a little crazy. We didn't have a clothing background. We ended up having to bring people in to help us figure out how to do it right. But we developed a line of the first really 100% hemp jeans probably since Levi Strauss.
Wow.
We had and they did them right. Like jeans are made in, it's not only about the fiber, but it's also about how they dye it, right?
Yeah,
And so you got white yarns woven across with indigo dyed yarns that are dyed in a very special way. Anyways, we found a factory that actually did all that in Romania, and we came up with hemp jeans, and then we had hemp shirts that were with woven in patterns and whatnot. And yeah, it was and we ended up growing the company over the next 6 years to about $3.5 million in sales across the U.S. and some in Europe. We went to the first cannabis cups in 94, 95, 96 in Amsterdam, and all these European retailers wanted to pick it up. And so yeah, anyways, it was a lot of fun.
no, that's awesome. And it's
Yeah.
just it's so interesting because making clothing out of hemp isn't the easiest from what I've gathered, getting the machinery, the decorder and all of that. Am I in the right lanes with that, saying it?
You're 100% right. So the way hemp is processed, to remove the fiber, then to straighten it and turn it into yarns, is essentially largely the same over the last over 100 years, right?
Yeah,
So the
yeah,
equipment that they had over there in Eastern Europe was quite old. Right? It was
Yeah.
not new technology, with the exception of like how they were doing the dyeing and that kind of thing. And so, yeah, you're right. It's I mean, basically, they would take the fiber and they would put it into in ground water, and they would let it sit and naturally wet in that water, and then take it
Yep.
out and run it through a decorticator to separate out the bast fiber, and then through scutching and hackling, which was other processes that would then straighten the fiber and allow them to eventually spin a yarn out of it. And it took a while to figure it out, you know, and to get the quality we wanted and make it happen. And we were, like I said, it was, you know, a little amazing that we got through all that, because we really didn't, you know, we didn't have a background
Yeah.
in textiles and garments, but we found some other people to help us. Barbara Philippone, who's still in the industry out in Colorado Springs, and does textiles and whatnot. She helped us immensely, and was a big
Awesome.
part of our, you know, success in developing the garments. And you know, we had some of the good people too. So, but yeah, it was quite a journey.
Yeah, no, and that's so cool just to hear it firsthand because part of my hemp journeys, I always look at other avenues to make some money, right? And we were talking about that, like a clothing line, and I looked into the decorticators, and it was all like, I don't think we have one in the US. Maybe we have one or two, but it wasn't going to be used for hemp. And we are looking at trying to source one like from Europe and like looking at grants, but it ended up just being like a crazy thing to try to center on to do it like in Chester County, Pennsylvania, you know?
Well, you know that that's really interesting. You guys did all that research on one of the other challenges for doing it in the United States, as far as textiles goes, is the fact that the U.S. was built around cotton, and
Yeah,
cotton is a really short staple fiber, you know, an inch and a half, whatever, that kind of thing. And hemp was a very long fiber, and so most of the equipment that we had in the U.S. for spinning and for weaving and all that was
it
developed
wasn't big
around
enough.
cotton.
Yeah.
And so this is why we really had to do it over there. I think the U.S. hemp fiber industry is going to be more around composites, right? We won't be.
Okay.
There are people there. I don't want to take away credit from some of the people that are doing some great work. There are some companies down in North Carolina and others that
Yep.
are doing some really cool stuff with textiles from hemp, and developing some things. And there may be some breakthroughs on that that will allow some, you know, some larger scale. But I do think that the composites, things like, for example, auto parts, you know, on the interior of your door, for example, you've got, you know, underneath the leather or the fabric or whatever is there, you know, there's a substrate or a composite. And those were originally made from fiberglass, or over for a long time were made of fiberglass. And they've started to switch into natural fibers. And hemp is one of those that works really well.
Yeah.
BMW has been using that for decades now in the 3 and 5 series cars. That it's a hemp blended composite, and it performs better. It's lighter weight. It's recyclable at end of life. So there's a lot of advantages to that. And it's about the same cost as fiberglass. Fiberglass is not the greatest material after, you know, like, what do you do with it now?
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah.
And there
So
was a manufacturer that built their whole body out of hemp before. I
yeah,
saw that. Was that
yeah.
BMW or was that someone else?
There was one. Lotus did one. They had this
Okay.
car called the Ecolution.
Yep.
I don't think BMW did the whole body. I'm trying to remember. There's a few other people that have done it. It's been more experimental. I don't think it's been on large scale, but there was also a car out of Canada, Kestrel or something like that. I think that came out that had that too. I mean, that's amazing, right? And I mean, if you think about the applications, you could use it in an airplane, for example. You know,
Yeah.
the overhead bins or whatever, all these different pieces, because if you can make it lightweight and still lighter weight, you're
Yeah.
really making a huge difference in some of those, you know, like with an airplane that's, you know, using all that fuel to keep it afloat.
Yeah. No, it's wild and it was so used before and it's known to be such a strong versatile textile. I'm excited and just happy it's making its comeback, you know, into our modern lives. It's very important.
Yeah. And I think it is slowly, you know, this is going to be one of those things that's going to take some time because the infrastructure just wasn't there. But there's some companies that are investing into that. And I do see, you know, out in the Midwest, especially places like the Dakotas and Montana, and, you know, out there, there's people that are where they have the land base to do huge fields of fiber hemp, and they're starting to invest in it. And we're seeing it. And the construction piece that we talked about with hempcrete, a lot of people are starting to build structures, homes
Yeah.
with hempcrete, and realizing that it's got some pretty amazing advantages.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean, and just being fire resistant, how strong it is. That's such a staple. It can go against the weathering, it can go against elements, which is so important. But just the versatility of what they can build and the molds they can make and where they can get this thing. I think it has a really strong place for lower income, just nations, things like that, where we can use this textile and build these homes without having such a footprint behind it, you know?
Yeah,
And that's the next goal I feel like for us is let's get rid of our footprints. You know, we're leaving a pretty big one. And if we
yeah.
can kind of reverse that in any way, especially in manufacturing or industrial wise, I think it'll be a pretty powerful move, put it that way.
I completely agree. I mean, when you think about it, these houses are going to last a long time, but when they do finally come down, it's just literally lime and hemp, and that's going to go right back
Yeah.
into the ground. But more importantly, I think is the fact that you're actually capturing carbon, right? So the plant is
Yep.
taking in carbon during the growth cycle, and when you lock it in with when you make the hempcrete, you've then locked that carbon in, and it's not released into the atmosphere. And so you've got a home building process that can be like carbon neutral or even carbon negative. That's a cool part that a lot of people don't talk about.
Yeah, and even I know there's a lot of studies now with cannabis and radiation and what it will soak up through the ground. Like it's just so interesting. Like now that it's becoming more legalized and people are able to, I know people have always been doing studies, but now they're more open to releasing it without feeling they're like jeopardizing what they've been doing.
Hmm.
And the more and more we're learning about this plant that has just been covered up is really exciting. Just I'm a cannabis nerd, so I love learning all these avenues of what people are doing. So I believe in it so much. It's so powerful. And so you're getting in, you jumped into the hemp space, you're making this clothing, which is awesome. But at some point, I'm sure you started to pivot into other avenues, you know, because you're meeting more people, you're probably becoming more passionate about the space and how can I be more of an influence? What did that kind of look like in your early days, kind of getting more involved?
Yeah, one of the first things I mentioned was that Hemp Industries Association, which was a really important early trade association that a lot of the industry people, most everybody that was in the industry was involved in, and that was a great place not only to network but also to sort of work on building standards and to define what hemp really was, because hemp is one of these things certainly as a textile. There's other fibers that have tried to claim the name hemp subsequently because that hemp was the standard thing. So you've got like banana fiber from the Philippines. They call that hemp.
Yeah,
It's a completely different plant, but and things like that. So we were developing standards around that and just figuring out ways to work together to build the industry. But one of the biggest challenges, obviously, that we were all seeing was that why do we have to import this? And we
yeah,
knew from Jack's research, like, wow, look at all this history. This is a crop that the founding fathers were growing it and talking about how important it was, and then it was being grown, for many, for centuries after that. So why did it, why were we being prohibited today? And so that led to, group of people within the industry kind of coming together. I was part of that to found a nonprofit C4 sort of advocacy group called Vote Hemp, with the sort of sole goal of like, okay, how do we bring this back? We want to change the law at the state and federal level because we had to do, you had to do both, and it was a daunting task. In the
that's a
beginning, there
doozy.
weren't, there weren't a lot of people that wanted to hear it, or they thought you were just, oh, it's just they're trying to legalize marijuana or whatever. I was like, no, we're trying to, and we
Yeah,
we developed um, really a lot of talking points around it that we could go to. And it didn't matter whether it was a Republican or a Democrat or what their background was. We had great talking points that were accurate. Like, hey, this is about jobs, right? Farmers and need another. You can use another crop like this. We don't really have any other crops for fiber, for example, other than cotton. And cotton's really only a southern crop. You can't grow it
yeah,
in the north. And then you talked about the seed and the nutritious value of the seed. And, I've always believed, and I still do, it's going to take time for this, but, hemp is better from a nutritional aspect than soy. And it's also tastier.
yeah,
And soy is one of our largest crops. There's no reason that hemp couldn't be substantially replacing that. There's still some barriers in place, even though we've gotten legalized to where farmers can grow it for grain, and they're doing that. But in any case, so Vote Hemp started going to, state legislators and different, we would find people that were interested in this and bring forward. And we slowly got some people to pass some state bills. And then eventually in 2005, we connected with Representative Ron Paul from Texas. And he was interested in this. It's a little bit of a longer story how he got interested, but he wanted to introduce a bill. And we said, well, we'd love to work with you on that. And he introduced the first Industrial Hemp Farming Act then in 2005. And then we just went out trying to get as many co-sponsors for it as we could and going around the halls of Congress. That was sort of our foot in the door. Okay, now we've got a bill, like something to talk about. And it was cool because his approach was he was really a libertarian Republican and he was
Okay.
taking a states' rights approach. And
Yeah.
so he wanted to just very simple bill, defined hemp and said states can regulate this if they, and so that approach carried through all the way to the final version, where even though it's regulated by the USDA at the federal level, states are allowed to regulate this under their departments of agriculture, and even tribes are allowed to regulate it. And that's something else we can talk about later. But where they can regulate it on their sovereign territories as well. So we thought that was great that it was just kind of opening it up and allowing each territory to decide how they wanted to work with it.
So you guys are like the pioneers of that.
I mean,
You started that.
we were definitely pushing it, early
Whew.
early days, and
I had some chills of you explaining all that to me. That's intense, man.
yeah, we spent a lot of time, knocking on doors and meeting with, staff and members, and we weren't funded to the point where we could go to all the, we were a grassroots group, not a
Yeah.
grass tops or whatever going in with the big checks and and all
No.
that thing. So we educated people one by one, and slowly we would get more and more people on board. And then we got eventually we got Ron Wyden to take it up in the Senate, and he did a companion bill. And then we had this incredible breakthrough where James Comer, who was then running for agriculture commissioner in Kentucky, ran on a platform of bringing back hemp for farmers in Kentucky, and he was a conservative Republican from
Wow.
Western Kentucky, and it's just a straight shooting guy. Not he didn't wasn't interested in anything to do with marijuana. It was just believed that hemp could be beneficial. And what happened was he got elected and he won by 20 points, and the other people or other Republicans on the ticket that year, nobody won. And so Mitch McConnell's office kind of picked up on that. They said, "Hey, what's going on here? What's going on with Comer? How did he really killed it on this race?" And they investigated it, and then he started reaching out to us and saying, "Hey, let's meet." And because before that, they didn't really want to talk to us. They thought we were, trying to legalize marijuana or something. And so eventually, when they realized what was happening and that there was this broad support for this and that could be beneficial for farmers, that was a huge breakthrough when McConnell came on board and then started working with Wyden. And we always tried to find people to work across the aisle. I mean, I can tell you about states where, California, we had Chuck DeVore, who was a libertarian Republican from Orange County, working with openly gay. So Mark Leno is his name. Senator Mark Leno. He was openly gay, Democrat from San Francisco. Those two guys didn't agree on a lot of things, but
Yeah.
they came together and they co-sponsored a hemp bill. And so we always tried to keep it like that. Like, hey, this is beneficial regardless of what your political background is. This could
Yeah.
be good for for small businesses, for the environment,
Humans.
all
Yeah.
you name it, or for farmers. So
Wow. And what was that like? Like having to go and be in the rooms of these higher up claimed officials, that you now have to kind of persuade, and they're looking at you at a certain way, I'm sure, because of what you're trying to bring to them. Like you said, hey, this is marijuana, and you have to change that, right? Well, what was that like? Like, were you ready for that? Did you think, like, were you already a guy who you think you could do that, or did you kind of, put the battle suit on and take it upon your shoulders?
yeah, I mean, obviously we put on a suit and go in there and want them to to take the right impression of us as an industry for straight up. But honestly, I feel like hemp cannabis is because this is all cannabis, right? It gave us all the arguments we needed. We didn't have to
Yeah.
make anything up. We didn't have to create fake reports or whatever to try to sell them on something. It was like we were going and telling them, "Hey, this is really something." And not only that, people were importing hemp into the United States, so we could say, "Look at all these imports. This could be grown right here." And,
Yeah.
why aren't we doing that? Right. So I think, we felt very confident about it. And once we would sit down with them and we would give them we generally were getting pretty positive responses. So slowly we were building up more and more, more co-sponsors and support for the bills. And then the big breakthrough, 2013, Jared Polis, who's now the governor of Colorado, he was a congressman from Colorado, and he decided he wanted to introduce a bill that would allow for Colorado State University to do research on hemp. And so it was a pretty limited bill. He put it in the House, and then when the Farm Bill came up, he
Yeah.
was able to introduce it as an amendment to the Farm Bill. And it was a huge moment for us because all that hard work that we had done, talking to staff, meeting with members, and educating them on this, finally paid off. We had 162 Democrats and 63 Republicans come together and vote for that amendment, and it got onto the House version of the Farm Bill. Just we had just a few votes over what we needed, but to get that bipartisan support was huge, right? And then Mitch McConnell, who was the majority leader at the time, was able to work some magic. When they eventually, with these farm bills, what happens is the House passes one version, the Senate passes a different version,
Yeah.
then they go into what's called a conference committee and they meet and they figure out how they're going to work it out. And during that process, McConnell basically was able to make some changes and get the original what became the 2014 Farm Bill, right, which allowed for pilot programs and research on hemp, and that opened the door for James Comer and other agriculture commissioners in states where it had been legalized to say, okay, we're going to start regulating this in our state. And so that was, that once we had that opportunity and some farmers could start growing it, it was, I think we felt like it was inevitable at that point that it was just a matter of time. But at the same time, that we had, I mean, it was still very focused on fiber and grain
Yeah.
at that point, and that's what, you
That was
know,
going to be my question. At that time, did we morph into the oils yet, or are we still more in the industrial side of it?
were a few people doing it sort of, behind the scenes, and but what mostly was CBD, right? Like it
Yeah.
was, hey, and they were claiming that, it was legal. I mean, honestly, we said there was a court case we had back in 2001. The DEA tried to pass some regulations to basically ban any cannabis that had any THC in it. And we said, hey,
Yeah.
that's not what the federal law says. And we went to court and we got an injunction and ultimately a ruling against them in the Ninth Circuit. And that's the HI versus DEA first case that was ultimately ruled by the Ninth Circuit in 2004. And some of the people who used that decision, I don't think it was correct the way they approached it to say that they could extract CBD, and they were claiming they were doing it from the stalk because we always argued like you know, we're not doing
Yeah.
the leaves and the flowers here. We're just trying to get the stalk and the grain. That's where we were as an industry at the time.
Yeah.
But as more and more information came out about the benefits of CBD, some people started to say, okay, let's push the envelope a little bit, and they started putting those products out. And frankly, CBD has turned out to be just have some incredible benefits. A lot more, data on that is great. I think we've gone way beyond, clearly the original intent. If you talk to, Senator McConnell and others that were passing this legislation at the time, that, they wanted to limit it to just be hemp. They put in that zero point 0.3
Yeah.
THC,
Limit.
and we even said, hey, we think it's a little too
That's,
low, but
yeah.
if that's the best we could do right now, sometimes you have to make progress incrementally. A lot of people are like, "Why did you do that?" It's like, hey,
Hey, what were you
progress goes
against?
that way. Sometimes you get what you can get, and you work on
Yep.
things later and try to, advance it further. But bottom line is they had that zero point 0.3 THC, and they also put in there that the testing, that the crop had to be regulated by USDA. There had to be testing, and the testing had to include testing for Delta 9 THC post decarboxylation.
Okay.
And people grabbed onto, maybe it wasn't the most perfectly drafted language in there, and they, and I don't know if it's ever really been fully tested in the courts, but a lot of people have said, well, that means we can sell products that have THCA in it or
Yeah.
whatever. Of
The
course, we know
loophole.
that is, again, that wasn't the original intent, and more importantly, THCA is not a thing that's fixed in that never converts, right? Like it can naturally convert over just time sitting
Yep.
in a jar. So the idea that that's that that is that was legal under the farm bills, I think is still pretty questionable. But here we are now. We have all these states pushing back on it, and it's
Yeah.
ultimately. I think we're looking at Congress has to figure out a cannabinoid lane and has to figure out what the regulations are going to be around cannabinoid type products, including cannabis and so-called hemp derived. Thing that was super disappointing to me was just the synthesized stuff. We
Yeah.
were always about natural cannabis and the idea that it was being synthesized, so things were being synthesized in the lab. I didn't want any part of that. That wasn't something that
Yeah.
I was interested in.
I agree to that aspect of it for sure. And I think you having so much insight of these individuals' minds at the time and seeing where we kind of blown the door open on this hemp market, either in the white area or the black area, right, with this THCA. Where do you think this is going to make a step backwards because all of these regulators are now being pulled to the attention of what's going on? Or do you think this is a good opportunity to like get the reins on it and position it to be stronger? I think you have a pretty good insight on these people. So
Yeah, I
what do
feel
you
like
think?
it has certainly had some blowback. I mean, in multiple different ways. We worked in California after the Farm Bill was passed. The 2018 Farm Bill was passed. We worked hard in California. I was part of the California Hemp Coalition, and we were working to try to get the law fixed there because the law had been. We tried to pass bills there, and we got vetoed by Gray Davis, Arnold Schwarzenegger twice, then Jerry what the heck was his last name? It was Jerry Brown, sorry, Governor Brown. And in any case, eventually when they finally got it passed, it had been so watered down because they kept saying, well, we'll compromise, we'll change this. So we had to go back and kind of work on that. And what we ran into was that the marijuana industry, there was a lot of concerns in the marijuana industry there about hemp. In fact, our
Yeah,
main opposition had been the Narcotics Officers Association and the cannabis growers up in Humboldt. And we understood that because they were concerned about pollen. And we
yeah,
said, hey, let's modify this so that counties can opt out of this. We don't want hemp to be something that's going to ruin anybody's existing industries. But if somebody in Central Valley wants to grow hemp, they ought to be able to do it. Let Humboldt have their own rules, and so that's the way we approach that. But I guess my the bottom line was we started talking with California Cannabis Industry Association, other trade groups, and we were trying to come up with a compromise as we were moving forward. And it was difficult because they were saying, well, hey, we have to pay all these taxes and we have all these other regulations and it doesn't seem fair. And we said, well, does it make sense to try to move hemp into that really bad model, or does it make sense to use hemp as an argument to move you guys towards a better model? And that's kind of what we said is like, we should collaborate, let's work together and try to figure it out. But it seems, that was a few years ago. I haven't been involved that in the last 4 or 5 years here, and it seems like there's been massive blowback now, and California's pretty much banned the hemp even being mailed into the state, and
yeah,
so it's a lot of, and I get the frustration in the marijuana community there with the bad regulations that have come out of Sacramento. The taxes just crazy how much they're, and that's really hurt their industry. So I understand why they felt like it wasn't a fair playing field. They wanted that's what they were looking for. So but it's just in looking at all that, yeah. So I do feel like there has been a lot. Like we've seen a lot of states. Texas just came very close to passing one.
yeah,
Tennessee's done it. Ohio governor just put in, a new emergency policy, and they're concerned because there's people selling stuff that looks like candy that's got very high amounts of cannabinoids in it that's being sold in, stores where there's not really any kind of age gating or regulations. And there's people calling the poison control center saying, "Hey, my kid's, taking these gummies and they're taking them to the hospital and stuff, and it's not good." And I
yeah,
think there needs to be regulation. We need safe, tested products, and people need to understand what they're getting. So I think it's unfortunate that that's happened. The industry really had needed to be more wasn't able to self-regulate. So it just seems like that's. But on the other hand, I think that ultimately, I do believe that Congress is ultimately going to have to deal with this. We've got almost 40 states that have either medical or adult use cannabis now, and I think Congress has to come around and say, okay, yeah, the majority of the people of this country want cannabis to be legal. How are we going to regulate this and then that cannabinoid lane needs to be created where, however they decide it's going to work, that it has to be regulated. In New York, where I'm working now, we've got the state cannabis regulator, OCM regulates hemp, and so that it is one lane there, and they get to determine how that works, and I think that's probably the kind of model that we're going to see down the road. Where there's going to be a single regulator around cannabinoids. What I'm hoping is that on the fiber and grain side, they can just kind of let the farmers do their thing. If you know that they're growing it in the correct way, and that they're using seeds that are certified in that kind of way, that should just let them grow it. It shouldn't have to go through all the testing and all that. Maybe just a occasional inspection or something. But yeah, we want to see farmers be able to grow it for that, like they grow any other crop.
Yeah. No, and it's such a at least for the Amish, I mean, we were talking, they're used to this one family, they grow gourds, right? That was their main product. And she was telling me that she can make almost like 5 to 8 thousand an acre off of gourds.
That's great.
And 2017 when the hemp bill, 2018 when the hemp bill first came around and the hemp market was at a high, maybe you could achieve that depending on the biomass that you were growing. But when that market took that hit in 2019, 2020, man, just with the surplus, I mean, it was kind of heartbreaking to see our farmers made out, but like just countrywide, what these states were running into with these problems of surplus of like, some farmers took a leap to get into that, to trust it. And I think there's some parts of it where well, not me or you, but we let them down because we didn't fully have a grip on how to regulate it and how to produce it properly and put the bottleneck where it needs to be. But it's a new industry. I think in the next 10 years, right, that will really be solved. And we have to appreciate the nuance of what we're paving. It's a new industry here.
Yeah.
It's been around, but professionally, career-wise, at this level, we haven't been able to do this yet. So it's going to take some time.
Yeah, to be fair, we were watching that really closely, right? In 2018, there were maybe, you know, 3,000 licenses across the US or something like that.
Yeah.
And then in 2019, all of a sudden you had 19,000, 20,000 licenses. And the thing was, and we were saying this to everybody that that we were, or was following us or contacted us, it's like, start slow,
Yeah.
test this out, grow a couple an acre or two, and we saw people go, oh, I'm going to grow 500 acres, 100 acres, whatever. And the thing was, there just wasn't a market to support all that. They didn't know where we said, find somebody to buy your crop before you
Yes.
plant it, because
Yes.
if you have a buyer and you sign a contract, well, then you're golden. You've got somewhere you can sell your crop. But if not, you're assuming that there's just going to be this unlimited demand,
Demand.
and the reality is, the CBD market, or that cannabinoid market at the time, then was really could be supported on maybe, I don't know, 1,000 or 2,000 acres or something total
Yeah.
for the country. So it doesn't take a lot of that to produce all that. Whereas the
No.
fiber and grain could be literally could be millions of acres
Yeah.
as it grows here. So
Oh, I think so. And there's just more avenues, I think, for the fiber and grain. Like just with the textiles or even like feed for animals, agriculture, things like that. I had the Senator of Agriculture out to our fields. What was it? Russell Redding, I think his name was. And that was his plan. That's why he wanted hemp to be here because we deal with such a flow of animals. He was like, it's such an enriched feed with the omegas and things like that. And I was like, I'm really glad you knew some of this stuff. And then I walked him through like what are cannabinoids, what are terpenes, what are the different levels of hemp, like what can we do with it in the future. And it was really cool to have someone at that stature like be walking with me, just like a dreaded kid in a hemp field and like wanting to learn and then like taking on that knowledge because sometimes when you're talking about cannabis to people, like they will have that stigma towards you that, just a precursor judgment, like, oh, this guy, he smokes pot. Like, what all does he know? So it's really cool to see that morph, that change in people coming to us and wanting to learn about it. It's we're in the right lane and we're getting there and it's really
sure.
cool.
You mentioned the animal feed, and that's a thing that still hasn't been sorted out, and it's really unfortunate how that process works, right? Because the I mean, for people that are listening, maybe that don't know that much about hemp grain or whatever, the seed from the plant, right? If you press the oil from it, you get something called seed cake that's left over, and it has a lot of value as animal feed. And yet the way we regulate things that go get fed to animals in this country is through a private organization called AFCO, or the American Association of Feed Control Officers, through the FDA, and they have basically thrown up all these barriers to that moving forward, wanting millions of dollars of studies and all this.
Yep.
And we said, hey, hold on, hemp had already been submitted in 2018 to the FDA for human use.
Yeah.
Three main components, right, including the oil and the cake, and had been submitted to the FDA, and they had approved it as grass, or generally recognized as safe for humans. So if it's safe to feed to a human, and it's in the stores everywhere, why do we need millions of dollars of studies to feed it to animals? They're continuing to hold it up. They did. I think they are starting to allow it to be fed to chickens, but I think the big breakthrough will be if they start feeding cattle. So as
Yeah.
far as I know, just horses and maybe chickens are the only things that are getting it. But that
Yeah.
could really open up the market, and it could bring the oil price down, right? Once you have a market for that seed cake, then the oil price could come down, and then that would be really valuable.
Yeah.
But my personal favorite is the shelled hemp seed, or the hemp hearts, or
Yep.
I love that, and put in my cereal, or my salad or whatever, and it's super tasty.
Yeah. Yeah. And so you're not just hemp anymore, right? So you're in New York, kind of what you mentioned a little precursor earlier, and you are now involved in the whole cannabis aspect there.
Yeah,
Is that what I was reading, right? Called
that's right.
Sky, is
Yeah.
that Skyworld? Your
With
Skyworld?
Skyworld, yeah. So I'm a partner with my partner Alex Anderson, and I started the company. I'm the COO of the company, and yeah, we're up in Niagara Falls, and we're growing cannabis. And honestly, I had been working with the Rosebud Sioux tribe, helping
Okay.
them in South Dakota, and one of the people I was working with there introduced me to Alex and his dad up in New York, who are Native American. Alex and his father Tuscarora Native American, and we started working together on hemp initially up there.
Yeah.
And then when New York changed a lot of the regulations and that market really wasn't viable anymore, started looking at it and said, well, maybe we should take a look at this cannabis licensing and go for that. And so we did, and we were fortunate to get licensed to grow and process. And so yeah, we started the company. It's called Skyworld, and we've got the brand, and I don't know, close to 100 stores across New York, and we're super excited. Growing some really some nice high quality flower and indoor,
Yeah.
and yeah.
What what's it like jumping in? Because you have such an experience in the hemp, right? And cannabis, I'm sure it relates, but it's a little bit different. How was that navigating just New York regulations compared to what you're doing with hemp? Was it a hurdle at all, or did you kind of knock some dust off your shoulders?
Definitely knocking some dust off here. I mean, New York has put some real high bar
Yeah,
regulations and standards in place. One of the things that that's one of the more challenging parts of it, but I think it's really a great part of it, which would be something that would be important for hemp, certainly for cannabinoid and foods, is that they require GMP, or good manufacturing practices
awesome,
certification for companies in New York that are operating there. And so we went through that process to, and I kind of led that process to get us
cool,
certified. And we actually had an audit in January, and we got a 93 on our audit. I'm really proud of that. We worked very
nice
hard
man.
to kind of have a really good, high quality, process, and to meet that standard. So yeah, I think, you know, every state makes some, has their quirks and their mistakes and whatnot. But overall, New York is trying really hard to do a
Yeah,
good job in regulating the market. I think that we're feeling like they're doing a lot of good things right now, and geez, it's one of the more exciting cannabis markets in the country.
yeah. No, I love their payment plan, where if you don't keep up on your bills, you get listed. And so I am in your neighbor, I'm in New Jersey, helping this brand called Coast launch in New Jersey. We do organic edibles, and it's been a very interesting learning curve with Jersey and who is up to date on their credit. And it's such a powerful tool to have in cannabis, because for our listeners that don't understand, There's still a lot of gray areas when it comes to payments in cannabis and how you can go after people and receive them and recover that. We're not really adapting too well, but New York has taken upon themselves, and I think a few other states are following suit, where if you're not paying your bills, you get put on a list and you kind of get it aired out. And I think that's very important for cannabis because not all of it is heavy invested companies. Some of it's a small family brand, and they need that money to recover to keep going. And it stinks when people just don't play a fair game.
Yeah, completely. It's like in any business, right? Anybody who owns a business, whether you're in cannabis or whatever your business might be, understands this because in order to manage your business, you have to be able to depend on cash flow. And if you extend
Yeah.
somebody, most of the retailers in New York like to want to get net 30 terms, and we work with them on that. But yeah, if they don't pay on those terms at the end of the 30 days, and you're counting on that cash flow to make all your bills and stuff, and you have multiple people do that, it can create some real problems. It's very difficult to manage a business like that and to be successful. And so yeah, we think New York's doing it right by saying, okay, if you're not doing that, you can be put onto a list, and then everybody can see that who's paying their bills and who's not.
Yeah, yeah, it's pretty cool. So how's it been jumping into cannabis, getting it in the stores and doing all that? And your product line, do you guys have, is it obviously flower, but are you doing concentrates and other avenues as well, or what do you center on?
So we only started selling. So we started cultivation late last year. We got our
Cool.
licensing mid last year, and we started cultivation late last year. And so we started selling in mid March, and we're initially it was all flower, and then we added pre rolls pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And right now, that's our primary product mix. We are looking to stand up a lab, and we're hoping to do hash and rosin real soon here. We love that because it's solventless and really
Yes.
clean, and so that's the next piece, and we're just kind of taking it step by step. We're not trying to do run before we walk here, so we're trying to get just get everything really dialed in and make sure that we're doing the best we can with our cultivation practices and maintaining because it's not just about how you grow it, but it's curing it and just learning how all the pieces to put a really good product on the shelf that customers are going to say, yeah, I really like this, and I want to come back and get more of it. So we're just trying really hard to do that, and
Yeah.
yeah. And
Cause
I'd say one of the biggest challenges for us is we're in Niagara Falls,
yeah,
and so we're pretty far western New York. For people that may or may not know New York, it's a pretty big state
it's pretty big.
geographically and people wise, and we're way out in the west, and so we have to work hard to get our product down to to the bigger market, obviously to the Manhattan and the boroughs and other parts of the state. So we've worked really hard on developing our distribution as well to be able to get the product out there and into the stores. And so yeah, we're I think we're right where we should be. We're working as hard as we can to just to do the best we can and build a good team. We have a lot of good people that we've managed to bring on board, and we're hiring a lot of local people and good wages. Our lowest wage is 18.50 an hour. We're really proud of that too. And trying to make this a good industry and for and help people that are all on our team that are helping us make this happen.
Yeah, and it's when companies take that approach that helps just, confirm why we're here and they keep us here. Because it's the bad stories that give us a bad rap, the companies that don't pay their employees the right way, or maybe their just practices aren't as ethical. It's really important, especially for cannabis companies, to really adapt and have that because the spotlight is on all of us because this is a new industry and we're trying to standardize what are the levels or what are the morals that everyone should practice. And I think it's great hearing that you guys are putting that on your shoulders to make sure that your people are taken care of. And that trickles down everywhere. Because hey man, we're all doing the same thing. There's multiple companies out there, dozens of companies out there, probably in your neighborhood or just in New York, that are doing something similar. And I tell everybody it comes down to your legacy and it comes down to who you are. And
Yeah.
once, people are going to love your product, but if there's a way to get that story in their hands and they learn about the individuals that curated that product, that's what makes them stay on your shelf. Because then the company owners, the bud tenders, they feel they have a better purpose than just giving them a brand, right? They're supporting Eric, they're supporting Alex, they're supporting what they're behind. And I try to tell any company that I consult for or work for, that is the most important part. Your product, it has to be good, but if your people aren't in line and you don't have a story of why you're here, it's not going to work out for you. Because the dude down the street is going to create a better story, and people are going to like that because that's what we resonate with. It's a community plant. Cannabis is all about the community, man. So Eric, when it comes to that, how's it been like learning curing and all these different processes? Because it's way different than industrial hemp. It's totally different. How was that learning curve?
It has definitely been fascinating. As I mentioned, we have some great people on our team. So
Yeah.
we brought in, our head cultivator out of Colorado, Jason McLean's been doing this for 20 years out there, and he brought a lot of, great expertise to us and to our team, and learning all the little nuances of like the proper way to dry and cure and to store and to just, the packaging piece, all that, and then getting it to the store while it's still fresh and everything. Yeah, it's critical because you can grow a great flower and then you can really mess it up if you don't,
It's
and
wild.
yeah. So we've worked on a lot of little things to really get our process, is really well dialed in so that we can put a product on the shelf that we're really, proud of, and we're still working on it. I mean, I think it's a constant improvement process. We're looking at ways we can continue to do even better. And but yeah, it's definitely a lot different than curing hemp. I've been in some of those facilities where they're, putting in these huge drying machines and hanging it out,
Yep.
in open, barns and this and that, whatever. It's like, hey, yeah, that wouldn't work for what we're doing with, you don't want your, you want to bring those terps out, right? You want to have like a great, taste
Yeah.
and smell, aroma to it. And, you don't want to smell like hay. And so anyways, that curing process is pretty critical.
Yeah. No, it's been consulting wise, that's usually the biggest hurdle for people to understand. And it was more in the hemp space because I'm working with these Amish farmers that don't understand like drying because they're just used to tobacco. They can
Yeah.
throw it anywhere. So when you're growing for oil and walking them through like, hey, this is how we have to cure it and this is what that means, that was the biggest hurdle. And just getting a stable environment for them to hang and cure and learn all that. So on a cannabis legal side of things, I know it had to have been a learning process. So I applaud you, my man. What's next on your horizon? You think you're kind of going to be rocking with Skyworld for a while. Is there anything else that you kind of have an interest in? You're kind of paving these paths for all of us. I really appreciate your time and these insights. It's monumental what you've been doing.
So honestly, I'm fully 100% focused and dedicated to Skyworld right now.
Cool.
It's an important project, and I need to give it my all to make sure that we're doing, the best we can to be successful as a company. And I'm, just really fortunate to have a great partner in Alex, and, really excited about the opportunity that we were given. And yeah, I'm going to keep my head down on that right now. If there's opportunities to work on policy again related to cannabis, I certainly would be open to that. But this is definitely taking a lot of my time.
Well, I'm excited. Eric, thank you for your time. Everybody, please, East Coast, New York side of things, check out Skyworld, look for their product. The legacy behind this brand, I think, is really going to shine through, along with their quality as well. But I'm excited to see where you guys take yourselves in the next few years. It's going to be interesting, man.
Thanks, man. Yeah, and it's great to connect with you and learn a little bit about Coast. One of these days we'll have to connect. I'd love to come to Jersey and see what you guys are doing and learn more about that.
Yeah, yeah, it'd be great. So they started in Mass, but they're working their way down the coast, man, and here we are in Jersey. So it's been a good time. Very clean product. So anytime you have a moment, let me know. I'd love to fill you in on anything
I'll
coast, of
definitely do it.
course.
Where are you in Jersey?
So I am actually located in Pennsylvania,
You're
but
still in Pennsylvania.
I handle all the Jersey market at the moment. So yeah, it's
Are
been
you in
fun.
Lancaster, or where are you?
I'm like right outside Philadelphia, but
Cool.
I grew up in that Chester County area, more around Lancaster. But at the moment, I'm more in now that I moved back. What is this? Bucks County, I think it is.
Bucks.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Got it. I was just up there, where you're from. My son-in-law got married in, near Lidditz, and
beautiful.
We were up there at this beautiful venue, first weekend of October. So I love that. We
Awesome.
stayed in an old rural cabin up there. It's just beautiful, man.
Oh, that's
Love it.
awesome.
Very, very nice. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, if you ever find yourself making your way down, please let me know, man. Love to get together with you.
I'll definitely do that, man. Let's exchange info. Yeah.
You
Great to connect.
you got it. I'll get Zoe to connect us, and we'll go from there.
Awesome. Great to
Eric,
meet you.
man, enjoy the weekend. Thank you. Thank you so
Thank you.
much, just for your time, but everything that you have done for this space. It's I love hearing it, man. I appreciate that.
Thanks, man. I'm excited. I've had a great opportunity, really, and just it's been fun. I love this plant, and I love that I get to work with it every day. So
That's it. Keep carrying the torch, brother.
yeah, thanks. You too, man.
All right, my man.
Bye bye.
This episode is brought to you by Waddle, the world's fastest and easiest way to review and track your medicinal cannabis products. Waddle offers batch-specific reviews, so you'll know what to stash or what to trash. It's exclusively available for Pennsylvania medical cannabis patients. Waddle helps you take the guesswork out of your cannabis journey and ensures transparency with the verified product tracking. Download Waddle now on iOS or Android. That's WODL, and take control of your cannabis experience today.